I sat at our mahogany dining table, the same spot where I'd eaten thousands of meals over 28 years, watching my mother nervously adjust her pearl necklace as she asked about this month's basement rent payment. 7 weeks had passed since my parents kicked me out of my childhood bedroom to make room for my sister Emma's so-called art studio, demanding I pay $2,400 monthly for their moldy basement, or find somewhere else to live. The irony was delicious. I set down my knife, smiled calmly at my mother's expectant face, and delivered the words I'd been rehearsing. How funny. I haven't lived here for 7 weeks. The color drained from her carefully made-up features. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Wait, so where exactly are you living?" I took another bite of steak, savoring both the perfectly seasoned meat and the dawning panic in her eyes. My father's fork clattered against his plate. Emma stopped mid-chew, her mouth hanging open like a confused goldfish. The family secret I discovered while packing my belongings was about to shatter everything they believed about their perfect suburban existence. 7 weeks earlier, I'd been living what I thought was a smart financial strategy. At 28, with a solid software development career, pulling in $75,000 annually, I'd chosen to stay in my childhood home to save aggressively for a house down payment. My savings account held $47,000, and I'd calculated that within 18 months, I'd have enough for a substantial down payment on my own place in our expensive Northern California market. The bombshell dropped on a Tuesday evening in March. My parents, Robert and Linda, called me into the living room with serious expressions that made my stomach clench. The formal tone reminded me of childhood lectures about broken windows or poor report cards. "Paul, we need to discuss your living situation." My father began, his weathered hands folded in his lap. At 55, he still maintained the muscular build of someone who'd spent decades in landscaping work, though his temples had gone completely gray. My mother, perched on the edge of our cream-colored sofa, wore her nervous smile. "Emma has decided to pursue her art career seriously. She needs proper studio space with good natural lighting." Emma, my 25-year-old sister, stood in the doorway, wearing paint-splattered jeans and an oversized sweater. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she clutched a palette knife like some sort of artistic weapon. "I've been accepted into a prestigious online art program," she announced, her voice carrying that familiar tone of manufactured drama. "This is my chance to finally make something of myself creatively." I stared at them, processing the implications. "You want me to give up my room? The lighting in your room is perfect for painting." Emma continued, stepping forward with theatrical gestures. "The way the morning sun hits that east-facing window creates this incredible natural illumination that you just can't replicate with artificial lighting." My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "We've looked at our options, and the basement could work well for you. It's completely separate with its own entrance. More privacy, really." The basement. I couldn't hide my disbelief. "You mean the unfinished basement, with the concrete floors, and the water heater that sounds like a diesel engine?" My mother's nervous laugh filled the awkward silence. "Well, we'd fix it up, obviously. Make it livable, comfortable. And," my father added, his voice taking on a business-like tone, "we'd need you to contribute more significantly to household expenses. $2,400 monthly would cover utilities, your space, and help with the mortgage payments we're struggling with." The number hit me like a physical blow. $2,400 for the basement. Emma's eyes welled with crocodile tears. "Paul, this is really important to me. I've never had a real chance to pursue my dreams. I've been working dead-end retail jobs for years, and this art program could change everything. Can't you support your sister's artistic journey?" I looked around the room at these three people who were supposed to care about me, feeling like I'd stumbled into some alternate reality. "What would you charge, Emma, for my room?" My parents exchanged glances. "Well," my mother stammered, "she's just starting her career. We thought 400 would be fair." 400 for my childhood bedroom with the built-in desk I'd studied at through high school and college. 400 for the space where I'd displayed my baseball trophies and Star Wars posters. $400 for the room with the comfortable reading nook by the window where I'd spent countless hours. $2,400 for a concrete cave that flooded every winter. I need time to think about this, I managed to say, standing on unsteady legs. Of course, my father replied quickly. But Emma's program starts in 2 weeks, so we'd need to transition fairly soon. Over the following days, I watched in growing horror as my family systematically dismantled my childhood. Emma bounded around the house with measuring tape and paint swatches, talking excitedly about easel placement and color theory. My parents nodded along encouragingly, praising her artistic vision and creative spirit. Meanwhile, I descended into the basement to assess my supposed new living quarters. The cement walls wept with moisture. A suspicious dark stain spread across one corner, where water had clearly leaked in during previous storms. The single bathroom down there had a toilet that ran constantly and a shower with questionable water pressure. The ceiling hung so low that I had to duck in several places. When I mentioned these concerns, my father waved them off. A little paint and some proper waterproofing will fix those issues. You'll hardly notice the difference. But I did notice the difference when I found my baseball trophies from high school unceremoniously dumped in a cardboard box by the garage. I noticed when Emma tossed my carefully collected Star Wars posters into the trash without asking. I noticed when my parents cleared out my bookshelf, my desk, my entire existence from that room, like I'd never lived there at all. The final insult came when I discovered the real financial arrangement. Helping Emma carry some supplies upstairs, I overheard her on the phone with her boyfriend Derek. $400 a month, can you believe it? She laughed into the phone. And Paul has to pay $2,400 for the gross basement. Mom and Dad are finally prioritizing the right kid. That's when I found the envelope that changed everything. Hidden behind my old desk when we moved it out was a manila envelope that had slipped down into the narrow gap between the furniture and the wall. Inside were property tax documents from the county assessor's office. The house had been paid off completely 3 years ago. My parents had been lying about struggling with mortgage payments. There was no mortgage. There hadn't been one for 36 months. I sat on my old bedroom floor surrounded by boxes of my displaced belongings, staring at documents that proved my entire family had been deceiving me. The basement rent wasn't about helping with bills. It was about funding Emma's lifestyle and squeezing maximum money out of their convenient live-in son. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. These people had raised me, claimed to love me, and now they were treating me like a tenant they could exploit and manipulate. But instead of confronting them immediately, I made a different choice. I decided to play their game better than they could. Rather than exploding in righteous anger, I channeled my energy into methodical research. 28 years in this family had taught me that emotional outbursts got dismissed, but facts were harder to argue with. I'd spent my career debugging complex software problems by gathering complete information before proposing solutions. This family crisis would get the same systematic approach. My mother had always described her work as part-time bookkeeping for a few small local businesses. She claimed it brought in maybe $15,000 annually, just enough to help with groceries and utilities. But her daily routine told a different story. She left the house every morning at 8 sharp, dressed in professional business attire, carrying a leather briefcase, and returning home around 6 in the evening. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. Her car, a late-model silver Lexus, was hardly the vehicle of someone earning $15,000 yearly. Her wardrobe consisted of expensive suits, Italian leather shoes, and jewelry that cost more than many people's monthly salaries. She carried a Louis Vuitton handbag and wore a Rolex watch that I'd assumed were gifts from my father. Following her one morning during my lunch break, I discovered the truth. My mother's part-time bookkeeping was actually a thriving accounting firm located in a prestigious office complex downtown. The brass nameplate outside the suite read, Linda Patterson CPA, Financial Services. Through the glass doors, I could see a reception area with 2 employees and what appeared to be a busy, successful practice. Public business registration records revealed the shocking reality. My mother's accounting firm had generated $180,000 in revenue the previous year. She wasn't a part-time bookkeeper, struggling to contribute to household expenses. She was a successful businesswoman, earning more than twice my software developer salary. My father's deception proved equally elaborate. His struggling small landscaping business operated out of our garage, where he stored equipment and managed paperwork. He frequently complained about unpredictable income, difficult clients, and the challenges of competing with larger companies. He claimed to earn maybe $30,000 in good years. But his truck told a different story. The Ford F-350 in our driveway was a current year model, loaded with every available option. Commercial-grade equipment filled the truck bed and garage, a 60-inch commercial mower, professional-grade leaf blowers, industrial hedge trimmers, and landscape design software that cost thousands annually to license. County contract records revealed my father's true financial situation. Robert Patterson Landscaping held multiple government maintenance contracts with the city-county courthouse library system and public schools. These contracts alone totaled over $300,000 annually in guaranteed revenue. His struggling small business was actually a lucrative operation with steady institutional clients and premium pricing. The family vacation photos displayed proudly throughout our house told another story of financial deception. Last year's 3-week European tour through Italy, France, and Spain could easily have cost $30,000. 2 years ago, they'd spent 10 days in Hawaii, staying at resorts that charged $500 nightly. Emma had posted hundreds of photos from these trips on social media showing expensive restaurants, first-class flights, and luxury accommodations. During these vacations, I'd been told I needed to house sit and couldn't join because someone needs to watch the property and we can't afford additional airfare. I'd accepted this explanation, believing my parents were stretching financially to take these trips and couldn't include me without creating hardship. Emma's art supplies revealed another layer of financial manipulation. Her bedroom, formerly my sanctuary, had been transformed into what she called her creative workspace. Easels, canvases, professional-grade oil paints, brushes that cost hundreds of dollars individually, and specialized lighting equipment filled every surface. A quick online search revealed that her supplies alone represented an investment of at least $10,000. Her actual artistic output was displayed proudly throughout the house. Abstract paintings with muddy color combinations and no discernible skill or vision. Sculptures made from found objects that looked like sophisticated garbage. Digital art prints that appeared to be random color splatters generated by some online program. Anyone with basic artistic knowledge could see that Emma possessed no talent training or genuine passion for creating art. Yet my parents praised every piece with enthusiastic superlatives. This really captures the essence of human emotion. My mother would coo over a canvas covered in brown and yellow smears. Such innovative use of mixed media. My father would comment about a sculpture consisting of bottle caps glued to a cardboard tube. The prestigious online art program Emma had mentioned turned out to be a $400 course, offered by an unaccredited website that promised to unleash your inner artist in just 6 weeks. The same site advertised courses in creative writing, music production, and life coaching with similar dubious credentials. But the most devastating discovery came when I checked my credit report during this investigation period. My parents had opened a credit card account in my name 6 months earlier. The card showed a balance of $23,000, with charges for art supplies, travel expenses, and restaurant bills. They'd been using my credit and social security number to finance their lifestyle, while claiming financial hardship. The itemized charges told a story of calculated betrayal. $5,000 at art supply stores for Emma's equipment, $8,000 for their European vacation that I hadn't been invited to join, $3,000 at expensive restaurants during dates they'd taken without me, $7,000 in cash advances that had probably helped fund Emma's transition from retail work to full-time artistry. They'd stolen my identity and damaged my credit to subsidize the very lifestyle changes that had displaced me from my childhood home. Sitting in my car outside a coffee shop scrolling through fraudulent charges on my phone, I felt something inside me crystallize into cold determination. The family that had raised me were not who I'd believed them to be. They were manipulative, lying, financially abusive people who viewed me as a resource to be exploited rather than a son to be loved. But I wasn't going to confront them with tears or angry accusations. I was going to beat them at their own game with careful planning, documentation, and strategic patience. The basement they expected me to pay $2,400 monthly to occupy was about to become the stage for their downfall. My apartment hunting began immediately, conducted with the secrecy of a military operation. Every lunch break, every weekend morning when my family assumed I was running errands, I toured rental properties throughout the city. I'd learned to be strategic about timing viewing places when my parents were at work, and Emma was presumably creating her masterpieces. The third apartment I visited changed everything. Located in a modern complex 20 minutes from my office, it featured hardwood floors, stainless steel appliances, in-unit laundry, and a balcony overlooking a landscaped courtyard. The bathroom had heated tile floors and a rain shower that actually provided decent water pressure. Most importantly, it cost only $1,200 monthly, exactly half what my parents demanded for their moldy basement. The leasing manager, a professional woman named Janet, walked me through the space with genuine enthusiasm. "The building is only 3 years old," she explained, "and we include gigabit internet access to the fitness center and reserved parking in the monthly rent." I signed the lease that afternoon, providing first month's rent security deposit and application fees totaling $3,600. For less than 2 months of my parents' basement extortion, I'd secured a modern, comfortable living space with amenities their house couldn't match. The identity theft discovery had given me leverage I planned to use strategically. Rather than immediately filing criminal charges, I contacted the credit card company to dispute the fraudulent accounts. I also placed fraud alerts on my credit reports and froze my credit to prevent additional unauthorized accounts. But I wanted more than just financial protection. I wanted documentation that would destroy their carefully constructed lies. Using my software development skills, I researched housing codes and tenant rights in our county. The basement they'd tried to rent me violated multiple safety regulations. The ceiling height was below legal minimums for habitable space. The electrical wiring was outdated and potentially dangerous. Most critically, the space lacked proper egress windows required for basement bedrooms. I scheduled an anonymous inspection with the county housing authority, claiming to be a concerned neighbor who'd noticed construction activity that might involve illegal rental units. The inspector, a thorough man named Rodriguez, spent 2 hours documenting violations. "Whoever's thinking about renting this space could face serious liability," he told me over the phone afterward. "No permits for occupancy conversion, multiple code violations, potential mold issues. Any rental agreement for this space would be legally void." Armed with official documentation of the basement's uninhabitable status, I began planning my exit strategy. The move itself required careful coordination. My parents left for work by 8:30 each morning, and Emma rarely emerged from her art studio before noon. This gave me a 4-hour window to systematically relocate my belongings without detection. I rented a small storage unit and began transferring non-essential items first. Books, out-of-season clothing, childhood memorabilia, electronics I didn't use regularly. Each morning, I'd load my car with boxes and bags, telling anyone who asked that I was taking donations to charity or helping a coworker move. The process took 3 weeks of gradual reduction. I left enough clothing and personal items in the basement to maintain the illusion of occupancy while removing everything of actual value or importance. During this period, I also documented the basement's condition with photographs and videos. Water stains, mold growth, electrical hazards, structural deficiencies. Every code violation and safety concern was recorded with detailed timestamps and measurements. Emma's boyfriend Derek became an unexpected source of intelligence during this phase. He'd started spending more time at our house ostensibly to support Emma's artistic development, but actually to avoid paying for his own housing. I'd initially dismissed him as another of Emma's questionable romantic choices, but observation revealed more complex motivations. Derek was 32, claimed to work in marketing, and drove a BMW that seemed expensive for someone with an uncertain employment situation. He'd stay at our house for days at a time, eating our food, using our utilities, and occupying Emma's attention with what she believed was genuine relationship development. But I noticed inconsistencies in his stories. He claimed to live alone in a downtown apartment, but he never invited Emma there. He said he worked for a digital marketing agency, but he never received business calls or emails during his extended stays. Most suspiciously, he wore a wedding ring tan line and had a set of car keys that included what appeared to be house keys for multiple properties. My suspicions crystallized when I followed him one afternoon after he left our house. Instead of driving to any downtown apartment, Derek drove directly to a suburban neighborhood 15 minutes away. He parked in the driveway of a modest two-story home, where a woman and two young children greeted him enthusiastically. The woman kissed him passionately. The children called him Daddy, and they all disappeared into the house together like a happy family. Derek wasn't just Emma's boyfriend. He was a married father of two, who was using my sister as a convenient side relationship while maintaining his primary family obligations. Online research confirmed my suspicions. Marriage records showed Derek Williams had married Sarah Thompson 4 years earlier. Property records listed both their names on the suburban house mortgage. Social media profiles showed family photos, vacation pictures, and anniversary celebrations that painted the picture of a committed marriage. But Derek's deception extended beyond simple infidelity. He'd been telling Emma that he was planning to leave his ex-girlfriend and move in permanently to focus on supporting her art career. Emma had been planning their future together, believing she was involved with a single man who prioritized their relationship. The evidence gathering was methodical and thorough. I photographed Derek entering and leaving the family home. I documented his car parked in the driveway overnight. I even managed to capture photos of him playing with his children in the front yard, providing clear evidence of his ongoing family commitments. This information became another weapon in my growing arsenal of family secrets. On a Thursday morning in early May, I removed the final items from the basement. My bed desk, remaining clothes, and personal electronics disappeared into my new apartment, like the last act of a magic trick. The space looked exactly as it had when I'd first moved down there, empty and uninviting. I left a single note on the concrete floor where my bed had been. Thanks for the life lesson. Then I drove to my beautiful new apartment, hung my clothes in the spacious closet, and sat on my comfortable sofa to plan the next phase of my revenge. My parents expected $2,400 for a space I no longer occupied. Emma believed her boyfriend was committed and available. Derek thought he could maintain his double life indefinitely. They were all about to learn how wrong they were. Maintaining the illusion of basement residency proved surprisingly easy. My parents had never been the type to check on me regularly, and now that they viewed me as a problematic tenant rather than their son, they seemed even less interested in my daily activities. The basement's separate entrance meant I could come and go without detection, arriving for family dinners and leaving afterward with claims about needing to handle work projects or personal errands downstairs. I'm setting up my home office down there, I told them during my first week of secret apartment living. Need to optimize the space for remote work efficiency. My mother nodded approvingly. That's smart thinking, Paul, making the most of your new living situation. The irony was delicious. They believed they'd successfully manipulated me into accepting substandard housing at premium pricing, while I was actually enjoying a comfortable modern apartment that cost half their demanded rent. During this period of deception, I began documenting every interaction with hidden audio recordings. California's two-party consent law technically made this illegal, but I wasn't planning to use the recordings in court. I wanted them for psychological warfare. Family dinners became theater performances, where I played the role of reluctant basement dweller, while gathering intelligence about their ongoing schemes. Emma would chatter excitedly about her artistic progress, describing paintings that sounded increasingly pretentious and meaningless. I'm exploring the intersection of urban decay and natural regeneration through mixed media installations, she announced one evening, gesturing dramatically with her fork. It's about finding beauty in societal collapse. That sounds very profound. My father responded with the kind of forced enthusiasm usually reserved for children's school plays. My mother would update us on her supposed part-time bookkeeping work, carefully maintaining the fiction of limited income. Mrs. Henderson's bakery books are such a mess, she'd sigh. These small business owners just don't understand proper financial organization. Meanwhile, I'd seen her Lexus parked outside the office building that housed her thriving accounting practice, where she managed the financial affairs of dozens of successful businesses and earned more than most doctors. Derek's presence at family dinners provided endless entertainment as I watched him navigate the complex web of lies he'd constructed. He'd regale us with stories about his marketing work and downtown apartment, while I sat there, knowing he was married with children and living a completely fabricated existence. The urban lifestyle really suits me, he'd tell my parents over dessert. So much energy and opportunity downtown, though I'm thinking about making some changes soon. Emma would beam at these hints about their future together, completely unaware that his idea of change probably involved finding new ways to juggle his double life. During this time, I also continued documenting my parents' real financial situation. Property tax records, business license renewals, contract filings with the county, luxury purchases charged to their business credit cards. The evidence painted a picture of two people earning close to $500,000 annually, while claiming poverty to exploit their son. 3 weeks into my secret apartment living, Emma announced exciting news during Sunday dinner. Derek had proposed, and they were planning a wedding for the following spring. He's been saving for months to buy the perfect ring, she gushed, displaying a modest diamond that probably cost less than 1 month of her art supplies. We're thinking about a destination wedding, maybe somewhere tropical. My parents responded with immediate enthusiasm and financial support. We'll help with costs, of course, my mother declared. This is such wonderful news. How much are you thinking? My father asked. Ballpark estimate for the kind of wedding you want? Emma's eyes lit up with the kind of excitement usually associated with winning lottery tickets. Well, Derek found this beautiful resort in Costa Rica. The wedding package is only $15,000, and with flights and accommodations for family, maybe another $10,000 total. $25,000 for a wedding to a married man who was lying about his entire identity. That sounds reasonable, my father nodded. We can make that work. Then, my mother turned to me with expectant eyes. Paul, we'd love for you to contribute something toward your sister's special day. Maybe $5,000, just to help with the overall budget. $5,000 from their son, who was supposedly struggling to pay $2,400 monthly rent for a basement they knew was uninhabitable. I'll need to look at my finances, I replied carefully. The basement rent and moving expenses have been pretty significant. Of course, my mother said quickly. We understand you're adjusting to new expenses, but families should support each other during important milestones. The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted me to contribute $5,000 to fund my sister's marriage to a man who was already married to someone else, while continuing to charge me $2,400 monthly for housing I'd abandoned weeks earlier. That evening, I sat in my comfortable apartment and made a decision. The elaborate deception had served its purpose, allowing me to gather evidence and plan my counterattack. But it was time to escalate the situation. I contacted Derek's wife Sarah through social media, sending a carefully crafted message that identified me as Emma's brother and requested a private conversation about her husband. I included enough specific details about Derek's schedule and activities to prove I wasn't some random person making false accusations. Sarah responded within hours, and we arranged to meet at a coffee shop near her workplace. She was a petite brunette in her early 30s, with intelligent eyes and a straightforward manner that suggested she'd handle difficult news better than most people. I've suspected something was going on, she admitted after I'd explained the situation. Derek's been staying out late several nights weekly, claiming work obligations that don't match his actual schedule. And he's been unusually secretive about his phone and computer. I showed her photographs of Derek at our family dinners, documented evidence of his overnight stays at our house, and screenshots of Emma's social media posts featuring their romantic outings. The wedding is planned for next spring, I told her. Emma believes he's single and committed to building a life with her. Sarah stared at the evidence with the kind of calm that suggests someone processing information rather than falling apart emotionally. What do you want from me? I want my family to face the consequences of their actions, I replied honestly. Emma is planning to marry your husband, while my parents fund the wedding with money they've stolen from me through credit fraud and illegal rent charges. So you want me to expose Derek's affair? I want to coordinate our revelations for maximum impact. My parents are having a family dinner next Sunday to celebrate the engagement and discuss wedding plans. If you'd be willing to attend as my guest, we could reveal everything simultaneously. Sarah smiled with the kind of expression that suggested she'd been waiting for an opportunity exactly like this one. I'll bring my own evidence, she said. Credit card records, phone bills, hotel receipts. Derek hasn't been nearly as careful as he thinks. The plan was forming beautifully. My parents expected me to contribute $5,000 to a wedding that would never happen between my sister and a married man, while continuing to pay rent for housing I'd abandoned. They believed they'd successfully manipulated me into accepting exploitation and abuse. They were about to discover how wrong they were. But first, I had one more piece of evidence to collect. The federal investigation into my father's government contracting business was about to yield information that would destroy their entire financial house of cards. County purchasing records had revealed something suspicious about my father's landscaping contracts. Several projects listed completion dates for work that had never actually been performed. Billing records showed charges for materials that had been delivered to our house, rather than the contracted job sites. My father wasn't just running a successful landscaping business. He was committing wire fraud against government entities by billing for services and materials he'd never provided. Armed with documented evidence of contract violations and fraudulent billing practices, I'd filed a whistleblower complaint with the Federal Bureau of Investigation 3 weeks earlier. The special agent assigned to the case had confirmed that my evidence warranted a full investigation into government contracting fraud. These cases usually take months to develop, Agent Martinez had told me over the phone. But your documentation is very thorough. We'll be able to move relatively quickly. Sunday's family dinner was going to be more than just an engagement celebration. It was going to be the beginning of my family's complete destruction, orchestrated with the precision of a military campaign and the satisfaction of perfect justice. Sunday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made suburban dining rooms feel warm and inviting. My mother had spent the morning preparing what she called a celebration feast, in honor of Emma's engagement announcement to the extended family. The dining room table was set with her best china crystal wine glasses and the silver flatware that only appeared during major holidays. By 3 o'clock, our house was filled with relatives who'd driven in from across the Bay Area to hear Emma's exciting news and meet her mysterious boyfriend. Aunt Carol and Uncle Frank had arrived from San Jose with their twin teenage sons. Cousin Jennifer drove down from Sacramento with her husband Mike and their toddler daughter. My father's brother David came alone, having recently divorced his wife of 15 years, in what family gossip suggested was a messy financial battle. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation and carefully orchestrated family harmony. My mother flitted between the kitchen and dining room, adjusting flower arrangements and ensuring every detail met her standards for proper entertaining. My father held court in the living room, discussing business prospects and economic trends with the assembled men, while occasionally checking his phone with an expression that suggested important professional communications. Emma had transformed herself for the occasion, wearing a flowing blue dress that she claimed represented her artistic sensibilities, and displaying her engagement ring prominently for every conversation. Derek sat beside her, looking increasingly nervous as relatives peppered him with questions about his background, career, and intentions regarding their beloved family member. "So you work in digital marketing," Uncle Frank was saying, leaning forward with the intensity of someone conducting a job interview. "That's a growing field. What kind of companies do you typically work with?" Derek's response involved vague references to innovative startups and emerging market strategies that sounded impressive but contained no specific information. I watched him fidget with his phone and check the time repeatedly, behavior that suggested a man with somewhere else he needed to be. At exactly 4 o'clock, I excused myself to supposedly retrieve something from my car. Instead, I walked to the corner of our street, where Sarah sat waiting in her silver Honda Accord. She looked professional and determined, dressed in dark slacks and a burgundy blazer that suggested someone prepared for a business meeting rather than a family dinner. "Are you ready for this?" I asked as she gathered a manila folder from her passenger seat. "I've been ready for months," she replied. "Derek's been lying to me about working late while he was actually here playing house with your sister. I've documented everything." We walked back to the house together, and I led her through the front door with the confidence of someone introducing an expected guest. The living room conversations paused as relatives noticed the unfamiliar woman accompanying me. "Everyone," I announced in a voice loud enough to carry throughout the house, "I'd like you to meet Sarah. She's someone very important to our family celebration today." Emma looked up from her position on the sofa beside Derek, who had suddenly gone completely pale. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wearing her hostess smile, prepared to welcome another guest to their carefully orchestrated gathering. "How lovely," my mother said, extending her hand. "Any friend of Paul's is welcome here. Are you joining us for dinner?" "Actually," I replied, savoring the moment, "Sarah has some information that directly relates to today's celebration. She's Derek's wife." The living room fell into the kind of silence usually associated with funeral services or natural disasters. Derek's mouth opened and closed wordlessly, like a fish desperate for water. Emma's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror as she processed what I'd just revealed. "That's impossible," Emma whispered. "Derek, tell them that's impossible." Sarah stepped forward with the calm authority of someone who'd prepared for exactly this moment. "Derek and I have been married for 4 years. We have 2 children together, ages 6 and 3. We live at 427 Maple Street in Pleasanton." She opened her manila folder and began distributing photographs across the coffee table. Wedding pictures showing Derek in a black tuxedo, exchanging vows with Sarah in a white gown. Family vacation photos featuring Derek, Sarah, and 2 young children at Disneyland, the beach, and various birthday celebrations. Recent pictures of Derek mowing the lawn and playing catch with his son in the front yard of a suburban house. "These were taken last weekend," Sarah continued, indicating the most recent photos. "While Derek was supposedly working late, according to what he told me." Emma snatched the photographs with trembling hands, studying each image with the desperation of someone trying to disprove obvious evidence. "This doesn't make sense. Derek told me he'd never been married. He said he lived downtown in an apartment." Derek finally found his voice, though it came out as a hoarse whisper. "Emma, I can explain everything. This isn't what it looks like." "What it looks like," Sarah said firmly, "is a man who's been lying to 2 women for months while maintaining relationships with both. Derek leaves our house 3 or 4 evenings weekly, claiming work obligations, and drives here to spend time with Emma. He's told her he's single and available for a serious relationship, while telling me he's working overtime to provide for our family." My father stood up abruptly, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Paul, what the hell is going on here? Why would you bring this woman into our home to disrupt your sister's engagement celebration?" "Because Emma's engagement is based on lies," I replied calmly. "Derek is a married father of 2 who's been using our family hospitality to conduct an extramarital affair. Emma believes she's planning a wedding to a single man, while Sarah has been married to him for 4 years. The room erupted in overlapping conversations as relatives processed this revelation. Cousin Jennifer, was asking Sarah detailed questions about the marriage timeline. Uncle Frank was demanding that Derek explain himself immediately. My mother was attempting damage control by suggesting there had been some terrible misunderstanding. But I wasn't finished with my revelations. "There's more," I announced, raising my voice above the chaos. "Derek's deception is just one of several family secrets that need to be addressed today." I walked to the dining room and retrieved 3 manila folders I'd hidden earlier beneath the sideboard. Each folder contained documentation of different aspects of my family's systematic lying and fraud. For instance, I continued opening the first folder. Mom and Dad have been claiming financial hardship while actually earning close to $500,000 annually between Dad's government landscaping contracts and Mom's successful accounting practice. I distributed copies of business registration documents, tax filings, and contract records throughout the room. My relatives studied the papers with growing amazement as they realized the scope of deception involved. They've been charging me $2,400 monthly rent for an uninhabitable basement, while claiming they need help with mortgage payments on a house they paid off 3 years ago. I explained. They've also opened credit card accounts in my name without permission, accumulating $23,000 in fraudulent charges for family vacations and Emma's art supplies. Uncle David, who'd been quietly observing the proceedings, suddenly became very interested. "Robert, is this true? You paid off the house 3 years ago." My father's confident business demeanor had completely disappeared, replaced by the defensive posture of someone caught in multiple lies. "Paul is exaggerating the situation. Yes, we've been successful, but that doesn't mean we don't have legitimate expenses and financial obligations." "Like paying for Emma's wedding to a married man?" I asked. "You offered $25,000 for a destination wedding ceremony that will never happen because the groom is already legally married to someone else." Emma had been sitting in stunned silence, clutching Derek's hand while staring at the evidence spread across our coffee table. Suddenly, she turned to Derek with tears streaming down her face. "Is this real?" she demanded. "Are you actually married? Do you really have children?" Derek looked around the room, desperately searching for some escape from the corner he'd painted himself into. "Emma, you have to understand. My marriage has been over for years. Sarah and I are basically separated. We're only staying together for the kids until we can work out custody arrangements." Sarah's laugh contained no humor whatsoever. "We're not separated, Derek. We had dinner together as a family last night. You helped our daughter with her homework and read bedtime stories to our son. This morning you kissed me goodbye and promised to be home in time to watch the football game together. You told me you were ready to start a new life," Emma whispered. "You said you wanted to support my art career and build something meaningful together." "I did mean that," Derek protested weakly. I do mean that. It's complicated." But his protests were interrupted by the sound of the front doorbell ringing. I smiled as I walked to answer it, knowing exactly who would be standing on our front porch. 2 FBI agents in dark suits stood on our doorstep, holding badges and wearing the serious expressions of federal law enforcement officials conducting important business. "We're looking for Robert Patterson," the taller agent said. "We have some questions about his government contracting business." "That would be my father," I replied, opening the door wider. "Please come in. He's right here in the living room with the rest of our family." As the agents entered our house and introduced themselves to my father, I realized that Sunday's family celebration had exceeded even my most optimistic expectations for chaos and justice. The look on my father's face as FBI agent Martinez explained the federal investigation into contracting fraud was absolutely priceless. The FBI agent's entrance transformed our living room from a family gathering into what resembled a crime scene investigation. Agent Martinez, a stern woman in her 40s with graying hair and penetrating eyes, displayed her badge, while her partner, Agent Chen, positioned himself near the front door in a way that subtly blocked any potential exit. "Mr. Robert Patterson," Agent Martinez announced in a voice that carried absolute authority. "We're here to discuss irregularities in your government landscaping contracts that have come to our attention through a whistleblower complaint. My father's face shifted through multiple expressions, in rapid succession: confusion, fear, anger, and finally a kind of resigned panic as he realized the scope of his predicament. I don't understand. My business is completely legitimate. All contracts are fulfilled according to specifications. Agent Chen opened a briefcase and withdrew a thick folder containing what appeared to be months of investigative work. Our audit of county purchasing records reveals significant discrepancies between billed services and actual work performed. For example, your company charged $15,000 for landscape renovation at the courthouse complex on dates when security cameras show no crew or equipment present on the property. There must be some mistake. My father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Scheduling conflicts happen sometimes. Weather delays, equipment issues. The courthouse project was billed as completed during a 2-week period in January, when the entire complex was closed due to asbestos remediation. Agent Martinez continued. No contractors were permitted on the premises during that period. Yet your billing records show daily work completion and material delivery. I watched the extended family members process this information with expressions of disbelief and embarrassment. Uncle Frank kept shaking his head and muttering under his breath. Cousin Jennifer was gathering her toddler's toys with obvious intentions to leave as quickly as possible. But Agent Chen wasn't finished with his evidence presentation. We've also identified material deliveries charged to government projects, but delivered to your personal residence. 3 tons of decorative river rock premium landscape lighting systems, irrigation equipment and ornamental plants billed to taxpayers, but installed at your private property. My mother had been standing frozen near the kitchen doorway, but now she stepped forward with the kind of protective instinct that emerges during family crises. There has to be some explanation. Robert runs an honest business. He's been landscaping for 20 years. Mrs. Patterson. Agent Martinez replied, "Your husband's experience in the industry actually makes the fraud more serious. He knew exactly what he was doing when he submitted false invoices for work that was never performed." At this point, I decided to add my own contribution to the federal case being built in our living room. Agents, you might also be interested in the financial records I've compiled regarding the fraudulent credit accounts opened in my name. I handed Agent Chen copies of the credit card statements, applications, and identity documentation that showed systematic financial fraud. My parents have been using my social security number and personal information to finance their lifestyle, including European vacations and art supplies for my sister. Agent Martinez examined the credit fraud evidence with professional interest. Identity theft, in conjunction with government contracting fraud, significantly increases potential penalties. Mr. Patterson, you're looking at federal charges that could result in substantial prison time and financial penalties. Derek, who had been attempting to blend into the furniture during this federal investigation, suddenly stood up with obvious intentions to escape the increasingly dangerous situation. Emma, I think maybe I should go. This is really a family matter that doesn't involve me. Sit down, Sarah commanded with the voice of someone who'd had enough of her husband's deception. You're not going anywhere until we finish this conversation. Emma looked back and forth between Derek and Sarah with the expression of someone whose entire world had collapsed within the space of an hour. Derek, please just tell me the truth. Are you planning to leave your wife and marry me? Or have you been lying about everything? Derek's response came out as a desperate whisper. Emma, I care about you. I really do. But Sarah and I have children together, and divorce is complicated, and I never meant for things to get this serious between us. So when you proposed marriage last month, that was just another lie. Emma's voice was rising toward hysteria. When you let my parents plan and offer to pay for our wedding, you knew the whole time it was impossible because you're already married. I thought maybe I could figure things out, Derek replied weakly. Maybe find a way to make everything work for everyone. Sarah's laugh was sharp and bitter. Your solution was to commit bigamy, marry Emma while staying married to me. Or were you planning to divorce me without mentioning it, leaving our children without financial support while you started a new family? The room had become a theater of multiple overlapping crises. FBI agents were discussing federal charges with my parents. Derek was trying to explain polygamous relationship plans to his wife and girlfriend. Emma was having what appeared to be a complete emotional breakdown. Extended family members were gathering their belongings and heading for the exits. But I still had one more revelation that would complete the destruction of my family's carefully constructed facade. There's something else everyone should know, I announced, raising my voice above the chaos. I haven't been living in the basement for 7 weeks. The room fell silent as this statement registered with its various audiences. My parents stopped talking to the FBI agents and turned toward me with expressions of complete confusion. What do you mean? My mother asked. You've been paying rent and living downstairs. We see you here for dinner every night. I moved out the day after Emma took over my bedroom, I explained calmly. I've been living in a beautiful apartment across town that costs $1,200 monthly, exactly half what you were trying to charge me for your illegal, uninhabitable basement. I produced my apartment lease and rental agreement along with photographs of my actual living space. I've been coming here for dinner, and then leaving, letting you believe I was paying $2,400 for housing I abandoned weeks ago. My father's face went through several color changes as he processed this information. Paul, that's impossible. You can't just stop paying rent without notice. Actually, I replied, according to County Housing Authority, Inspector Rodriguez, any rental agreement for your basement would be legally void due to multiple code violations. You can't charge rent for uninhabitable space that doesn't meet basic safety requirements. Agent Chen looked up from his notes with renewed interest. Mr. Patterson, are you operating an illegal rental unit without proper permits or occupancy certification? The basement isn't a rental unit, my father protested. It's just temporary family housing for our son. Then why were you charging him $2,400 monthly? Agent Martinez asked. That sounds like a rental arrangement to me. I handed the agents copies of my documentation, housing authority inspection reports, photographs of code violations, and recorded conversations where my parents discussed the basement rent as a business transaction. They've been running an illegal boarding house operation while defrauding government contracts and committing identity theft, I summarized. My family has been systematically lying about every aspect of their lives while exploiting me financially and emotionally. Uncle David, who had been listening to these revelations with the fascination of someone watching a particularly dramatic television show, suddenly spoke up. Robert, you told me last Christmas that you were struggling financially and couldn't afford to help Mom with her nursing home expenses. You said the landscaping business was barely breaking even. That's right, Aunt Carol chimed in. You borrowed $5,000 from us 2 years ago for business equipment, claiming you'd pay it back when the company got more stable contracts. My father looked around the room at family members who were beginning to realize the scope of his deception. Business has its ups and downs. Sometimes cash flow is tight, even when overall revenue looks good on paper. Cash flow was tight because you were stealing from government contracts and spending the money on European vacations, I replied. You weren't struggling. You were funding a luxury lifestyle through fraud and family exploitation. Agent Martinez closed her notebook and stood up with the authoritative posture of someone concluding official business. Mr. Patterson, we'll need you to come with us for formal questioning regarding the federal charges. Mrs. Patterson, you'll also need to make yourself available for interview regarding the identity theft and potentially fraudulent accounting practices. As my parents were led toward the front door by FBI agents, as Derek tried to explain bigamous marriage plans to his wife and girlfriend, as Emma sobbed into her hands while extended family members fled the chaos, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete satisfaction. The people who had lied to me, stolen from me, and treated me like a resource to be exploited were finally facing consequences for their actions. My carefully planned revelation had destroyed their facade of respectability and exposed them as the fraudulent, manipulative people they actually were. But this was just the beginning of their downfall. The best was yet to come. 6 months later, I sat in my comfortable living room with a cup of coffee and the Sunday newspaper, reading the final chapter in my family's spectacular legal downfall. The local business section featured a small article titled, "Local Contractor Sentenced in Federal Fraud Case," which reported that Robert Patterson had received 18 months in federal prison, plus 3 years supervised probation for government contracting fraud and identity theft. The article noted that Patterson Landscaping had been permanently barred from government contracts and was required to pay $230,000 in restitution to defrauded taxpayers. My mother had received 6 months home confinement and community service for her role in the identity theft scheme, though her accounting practice had survived with reduced client base and permanent reputation damage. Emma had moved back in with my parents after Derek's marriage imploded in spectacular fashion. Sarah had divorced him immediately upon discovering his attempted bigamy, and Derek was now paying substantial alimony and child support, while living in a one-bedroom apartment and working at a call center. Emma's art career had ended when my parents could no longer fund her expensive supplies and pretentious lifestyle. The house where I'd grown up was currently for sale with proceeds designated for legal fees and restitution payments. My parents had been forced to liquidate their luxury lifestyle to pay for the consequences of their fraud. The Lexus was gone, replaced by a 10-year-old Honda. The European vacation photos had been removed from walls that would soon belong to someone else. But the most satisfying development was sitting across from me on my comfortable sofa, helping her 8-year-old daughter with homework, while her 6-year-old son built elaborate structures with building blocks on my coffee table. Sarah had become much more than Derek's ex-wife over the months following our coordinated revelation. Our shared experience of family betrayal had created a foundation for genuine friendship, which had gradually developed into something deeper and more meaningful than either of us had expected. "Mom, I don't understand this math problem," Sarah's daughter Jessica announced, holding up her worksheet with a frustrated expression. "Let me take a look," Sarah replied, setting down her own coffee and examining the homework with patient attention. I watched this domestic scene with contentment that felt almost surreal compared to the toxic family dynamics I'd escaped. Sarah's children had accepted me naturally into their lives, and I'd discovered that being a positive male role model was infinitely more rewarding than being my parents' financial exploitation target. My own life had transformed completely during these 6 months. Without the stress of family manipulation and financial abuse, my work performance had improved dramatically. I'd received a promotion to senior developer with a $20,000 salary increase. The money I'd saved by not paying illegal basement rent had been invested in improving my apartment and planning for the future. The credit fraud had been completely resolved with all illegitimate accounts closed, and my credit score actually higher than before, due to the documented fraud resolution. The restitution payments from my parents had covered all financial damages and provided additional compensation for the emotional distress they'd caused. But the most meaningful change was the relationship developing between Sarah and me. We'd begun as allies in exposing our respective family deceptions, but we'd discovered genuine compatibility, shared values, and mutual attraction that had nothing to do with our initial crisis. "Sarah," I said, watching her help Jessica with multiplication problems, "I have something I want to discuss with you." She looked up with the kind of smile that had become familiar and precious over the past few months. "What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about the future, about us, about the kids, about what we want to build together." "Are you getting serious on me, Paul?" she teased, but her expression showed genuine interest in where this conversation might lead. "I'm thinking about getting a house. Something with a yard for the kids' space, for all of us, room to grow as a family." Jessica looked up from her homework with excitement. "Would it have a swimming pool?" "Maybe not right away." I laughed, but we could definitely consider that for the future. Sarah's son Timothy abandoned his building blocks to join the conversation. "Would there be space for my trains?" "Absolutely. Every good house needs a proper train room. Sarah reached across the sofa to take my hand, her expression serious now. Paul, are you sure about this? Becoming involved with a woman who has 2 kids and a recently divorced situation is a big commitment. I'm sure about you, I replied honestly. I'm sure about Jessica and Timothy. I'm sure about wanting to build something real and honest and good with people who actually care about each other. That sounds like a proposal, she said softly. That sounds like exactly what it is. The kids erupted in cheers and questions about wedding plans, new bedrooms, and whether they could get a dog. Sarah kissed me with the kind of passion that suggested my proposal had been accepted enthusiastically. As we sat together planning our future, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The family that had raised me had turned out to be manipulative fraudsters who viewed relationships as opportunities for exploitation. But their betrayal had led me to discover what genuine love and partnership actually looked like. My phone rang with a number I recognized, but hadn't heard from in 3 months. My mother's contact information appeared on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. After a few minutes, I listened to her message. Paul, it's Mom. Your father gets out of prison next week, and we were hoping we could talk to you about reconciliation. We know we made mistakes, but we're family, and family should forgive each other. We've learned our lesson about honesty and treating you fairly. Could you please call us back? I deleted the voicemail without hesitation. Sarah had noticed my expression during the call. Your parents. They want to reconcile now that Dad's getting out of prison. What are you going to do? I looked around my comfortable apartment at Jessica, working on her homework at Timothy building architectural marvels, with his blocks at Sarah's intelligent and caring face. I'm going to continue building a life with people who actually love me, I said. My biological family had their chance to treat me with basic human decency. They chose exploitation and manipulation instead. Now, they get to live with the consequences of those choices. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? Sarah asked gently. Maybe someday, I replied. But forgiveness doesn't mean giving people unlimited opportunities to hurt you. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect yourself from toxic people, even if they happen to share your DNA. 6 months later, Sarah and I were married in a small ceremony, attended by her children, a few close friends, and co-workers, who had become our chosen family. We bought a house with a yard space for the kids' activities and room for the life we were building together. My parents sent a wedding card that I returned unopened. Emma attempted to reconnect through social media, but her messages were filled with the same manipulative language and victim mentality that had characterized our family dynamics for years. I blocked her accounts and moved on. The greatest revenge against people who had treated me badly wasn't causing them pain in return. It was building a life so much better than anything they could have offered that their absence became a gift rather than a loss. Have you ever had to cut toxic family members out of your life to protect your own happiness and well-being? Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most are actually the ones causing us the greatest harm. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your own experiences with family boundaries and recovery. Hit the like button if you believe people should prioritize their mental health over family loyalty when those two things conflict. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming manipulation and building authentic relationships. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to walk away from family members who refuse to treat you with basic respect and honesty. Thank you for listening to this journey from exploitation to empowerment. Remember that you deserve relationships built on honesty, respect, and genuine care. Never let anyone convince you that family obligation requires accepting abuse or manipulation. Your well-being matters, and you have the right to surround yourself with people who celebrate your success rather than exploit your loyalty. Sweet dreams, and may your chosen family bring you all the love and support you deserve.